No Skippy, please.
It took me years of therapy to even admit it. Like my parents and my mom knew it happened, and they kept sending me to therapists trying to get me because they saw the physical evidence. And I don't want to get into the disgusting details of how my mom knew there was evidence. She couldn't get me to talk about it. I wouldn't talk about it there. I didn't talk about it until I was an adult. And then I went to a therapist and then I pressed charges and all that stuff. I had to go to therapy to be able to talk about it. Bagel Man, they lived next door for several years. They were next door till the age I was 7. From the age
And I'm pretty sure he's lying about the story, just like hey, how he lies about everything else.
of 4 to 7, they literally lived next door. And I wasn't the only person they did it to. This person had multiple accusations before this even happened to me. He had accusations before I was born. No, Wes, they didn't beat me. They sexually assaulted me over and over and over and over and over and over, probably 100 times.
Yeah, so he's lying.
Which I told the police later in disgusting detail. And so NH needs to understand this. That's why I've said before I know he's a pedophile, because only a pedophile.
There you go. Okay, so he's making up the story so that he can get sympathy and make natural hypertrophy out to be the bad guy. Yeah, he's lying.
Pedophile would do that. Only a pedophile would reinforce that. It's kind of like if you knew his public personality, it was very clear he had some very devious sexual stuff. Just the things that he would say in casual conversations in public. If you're a straight male, for example, and you're exposed to the pheromones of a girl who is not of the legal age, who is ovulating or whatever, she's going to produce pheromones that might cause sexual attraction. You can't control that. Like everything that came out of his mouth was perversion.
Yeah, the guy who said little girls promote pheromones that will make you attracted to them.
You can't control that. Well, we think Blaha is crazy. We think he's weird. Well, maybe because I was abused 100 times as a kid. You think maybe that's a factor? You think maybe that might be a little bit of factor? Jamal, how did this experience influence? Is that a serious question? How did it influence my life? I don't know. I became a binge eater and blew up to over 300 pounds. I had a drinking problem. I've had a gun barrel in my mouth before. I'm going to say it affected me a little bit. Yes, I had.
He got fat because he likes tasty food, and he got addicted to alcohol because he just got addicted to alcohol. He was dating a chick who's also a meth addict. And I don't know if this gun barrel in the mouth story is true. Likely isn't, because he lies about everything else. But if he put a gun in his mouth, it's because his life sucks, not because he was sexually abused as a kid. It's because he's broke and can barely pay rent and he lives off government assistance.
Diagnosed PTSD.
And also can't get laid.
A formal diagnosis.
And nobody likes him and he doesn't have any family members who will talk to him.
In terms of the effect on my life, I'm lucky to be okay. Like I had a therapist tell me sitting there when I was going through some of this, she stopped and looked at me and goes, "How are you not in prison?" That therapist stopped and said, "How are you okay? How are you not in prison right now?" She's like, "Your coping mechanisms are amazing." Radash, I don't want to say that, but because I know he is one, I probably would.
Yeah, Jason Blaha beating natural hypertrophy to death. Buddy, your Out of shape and unathletic. You are not beating somebody half your age who's in good shape.
No, he wouldn't walk out of that ring. Unless you got 6 referees to pull me off of him.
By the way, this is the same guy who was too much of a pussy to fight me for $100,000. He said he'd fight me for $100,000, and then I put up a GoFundMe goal just to fuck with him because I knew he'd panic, and he thought there'd be a realistic possibility of me funding the money. And then he created a set of ridiculous stipulations that would be impossible for me to abide by for the fight so that he'd have an excuse to back out of it. So this guy wouldn't fight me for $100,000, and he's saying he'd beat natural hypertrophy if he was in the same room. Like, he's just so full of shit.